Hello, everybody. Back again with episode 2 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. Dave Firestone. We're going to be talking about a somewhat of a news story and another episode of Wheel Reviews, where we do another racing movie. So, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, and I should also mention that I've been made aware that my audio levels were a little low, and the volume mixing with the music was an issue, so I'm cutting the music out. I didn't really want to do it in the first place, but it was just something I tried to see if it would work, and it didn't, so I'm getting rid of it. And I've fixed the audio issues. You're welcome. Okay, so like a lot of classic things, Chip Ganassi racing in NASCAR has gone the way of the evening newspaper, and it's gone the way of the milkman. I can't really say I'm surprised. Ganassi has done a lot of great stuff in various forms of racing all over the world, but his NASCAR program was never going to live up to the Hendricks and the Penske's and the Gibbs racing. So I'm kind of not surprised. But what I am surprised at, and I was looking this up today, and I saw a quote from him where he basically said, after selling his entire operation to Trackhouse, he said, well, my team wasn't for sale, but they came to me with such a good offer that I had to sell. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that for a second. I mean, think about this logically. You look at what he's done in all other forms of racing, and then you look at what he's done in NASCAR. Imagine if you owned 4 pizza places. They're all in different areas of a large city, and they're all in good neighborhoods. But of the 4, 2 are not doing as well as the other 2. Now, don't get me wrong. That happens in business. Sometimes one operation is not as successful as another. But let's say through zero fault of your own, you have to close down one of your restaurants that was actually doing quite well and pretty successful. So now you've got 3 restaurants, 2 are successful, 1 is moderately successful. Somebody comes to you with an offer and you're not going to sell. You're literally going to say, well, my operation isn't for sale. No. If you've got 2 restaurants that are doing very successfully, then you have a third one that is not doing as well, you're going to be entertaining ideas to sell it. That's just the way it works. So I don't think he was going to come out and say, well, I'm going to be selling my team at the end of 20X season, but I think he was going to sell it eventually. I mean, you can't have just the amount of talent slip through your fingers with that team and not be frustrated. And you can't have the lack of on-track results that you've been having when you're a successful name in racing and not being frustrated. Now, granted, the fact that his Xfinity Series team crashed and burned, that was no fault of his own. He got caught up in DC Solar, which was, we know now it's a well-known and well-established Ponzi scheme, but at the time, to everyone, it was a valid business. It was making money. And then once the feds raided the owner's house, that was it, because he didn't have any other sponsors for the Xfinity team. And there's a reason you don't have exclusive sponsors, like one company sponsoring a car throughout the entire year, because if it goes down, you're screwed. And that's what happened. So when you have that and you have the lack of on-track results, you have the amount of talent that you could have made something with and lost, he was going to sell the team. There's no doubt in my mind. And if he really wants us to believe that, that's on him, but most people don't. I guarantee you that team is going to get sold in the next few years. And again, I'm not saying that it's a bad decision. I mean, if you're just pumping resources into something and you're not getting the results you want back, and it's you're successful, but you're not successful, do what you have to do. I don't blame you for that. But I don't know if he genuinely believes that or if he wants us to believe that. If he came out and said, look, we've had a rough couple of years, the economics of the sport are changing. He came to me with an offer. I was thinking of selling the team anyway. He came to me with an offer and I said yes. Okay, that makes perfect sense. I'm not blasting him for that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying be honest. Be honest. Because again, well, my team wasn't for sale, but he came to us with a great offer. Doesn't make as much sense as we've had a rough couple of years. The economics of the sport are changing. I was thinking of selling the team anyway, but he came to me with a great offer that I couldn't turn down. So I sold the team. Which of the two sounds more realistic? Exactly. And again, I'm not bashing the guy. I'm not saying that what he did was wrong. In fact, I agree with what he did. I just don't agree with the line of reasoning he gave. I hope his other race teams are very successful. I hope that he's happy with the deal. I hope that he's capable of moving on. I don't like the idea of just saying something that sounds good but is obviously not as sensible. And you know what? I could be wrong. He could not have been. He could have not had the will to sell the team. He might not have been thinking of selling the team. And they came to one offer and said, look, we know you're not thinking of selling the team, but we'd like to offer you this much money. Well, going back to the pizza place analogy. Again, if you're running a pizza place, you've already lost one pizza restaurant that wasn't as successful. And somebody comes to you for the moderately successful pizza place and says, I'd like to give you, and he quotes you a number that's going to be more money than you'll ever make from this place. Would you sell? Of course you would. You're a businessman. You know, sometimes it's not about making a lot of money. Sometimes it's about minimizing your losses. But if you're trying to minimize your losses and you get a very profitable offer, you go for it. And you don't feel bad for doing so. And again, it's not like we're talking about Rick Ware Racing that has no on-track achievements to speak of. This is a Chip Ganassi. This is a guy who's won a lot of things, not just in NASCAR, but all over the place. So I think he made the right decision. I wish Trackhouse the best too, because I think they're a good team. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. If they get the right driver, I like Ross Chastain. He's no Kyle Larson, but I think he's a solid driver. I think if he and Daniel Suarez can work well together, they could be very successful. I mean, they've got Pitbull, they got Justin Marks, so you've got a guy who knows all about racing and a money guy. So, yeah, I'm thinking that a new approach to a new era of racing would be good. And like I said, next week I'm going to be talking about the charter system, though I will not be as complimentary to it as I was here. I'm going to talk about wheel reviews next, but I'm going to take a quick break. So let's get to that. So I'm back from my little water break, and we're going to be talking about the movie Six Pack for this week's episode of Wheel Reviews. Now, Six Pack was released in 1982 and stars country singer, actor, and chicken enthusiast Kenny Rodgers. The plot is basically that Kenny Rodgers is a race car driver and he's driving through a small town in Texas. He goes to get lunch and people steal parts off his car. Stripping is what they call it in the movie. So he figures out who it is and chases after them. He comes to find out it's a group of 6 orphan kids who've been pretty much enslaved by the county sheriff. So the sheriff arrests him. The kids end up breaking him out of jail. He takes them along with him as their pit crew, which, this is 82. The rules were a little more lax back then, but I don't think they were that lax. But they do well in one race, and then they go to a NASCAR race, and the sheriff catches up with them. He takes the kids back, but in the end, the driver, who's named Brewster, by the way, Kenny Rodgers' character's named Brewster, is able to publicly humiliate the sheriff. The sheriff lets his kids go. He marries his sweetheart and adopts the kids. Hollywood ending, the end. Now, first off, the racing scenes were done using real racing footage, and they look good. There's something about those blocky 80s cars that just make me smile. I would like this movie a lot more, but there's one major drawback that is keeping this movie from getting a high grade. And that one thing is Kenny Rodgers. I like the man's music. I've seen him in a few other things that I thought he was great in. He's actually pretty decent in this, but he is not a convincing race car driver. He's not. I'm sorry, it's like if you've ever seen the movie McBain, it's not the one that has anything to do with The Simpsons. It's a movie about a group of Vietnam War veterans who get involved in a plot to overthrow a South American dictatorship. They're basically a paramilitary team. The movie stars Christopher Walken as McBain. And again, this was during the era of like the Schwarzenegger, the Dolph Lundgren, the Sylvester Stallone, the Jean-Claude Van Damme. All of them would have been more convincing leaders of a paramilitary group than Christopher Walken. Christopher Walken's a great actor. I'm not saying he's not. He's done a lot of good things in film over the years. He's very impressive. That being said, no way in hell would I ever consider him to be an action hero. I'm sorry. You can't convince me that he's an action hero. And I'm not the only one, because the movie was panned by critics. It was panned by the audiences. It's not had a good reputation. In fact, being used as the inspiration for a Rainer Wolfcastle Simpsons movie is probably the best thing it's got going for it. Because at least that one, the plot made sense, and you could believe Rainer Wolfcastle as an action hero, but Christopher Walken, he tries his best, but he just isn't convincing. And that's sort of the same problem I have here. I like Kenny Rodgers. His non-racing scenes are great. It's a great family movie. But as a race car driver, no, he's not convincing. And I should also point out that at the time this movie was made, he's 44. Now, he looks significantly older in the movie. But at the time of production, he was 44. This is a point where most drivers are either hanging up their racing shoes or they're considering it. He's still going all in as a driver. And again, the racing scenes themselves are good, but just him in car and him in uniform reciting lines, just it's not convincing. And there are people out there who, like, they love Kenny Rodgers to the point that they would get mad at me for this. No. I like the movie overall, but it's just, again, not believable as a race car driver, and that sort of kills off the plot. Now, not that you really needed a racing plot for this movie, because if you were, again, it was like the movie I reviewed last week where I said, look, you could replace it with a country singer trying to get his big break. And just take the racing out, put the country singer big break in, and it would work. Okay? And that would end. You would, Kenny Rodgers, if that was the whole plot of the movie where he was a country singer trying to get his big break, he was eating lunch in Texas and some kids stole some parts from his car. He gets arrested. The kids break him out. He adopts them, and then he gets his big break, and it would work perfectly. It would be one of the greatest reviewed movies of all time, and Kenny Rodgers would probably get an Oscar. But racing, he doesn't come across believable as a race car driver. He just doesn't. And again, probably a nice guy, very good singer. I've seen some other stuff he's in. Just no. So, and again, other things about the movie, the cinematography is great, the audio is great, racing footage, obviously great, but it's just not working out the way you'd want it to. And I'm bashing a guy that I like, so I really kind of feel bad about it, but the truth's the truth. Not every great musician has all great songs. So yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Driver Seat Blog Radio. I'm going to do another movie review next week. I'm not 100% sure which it's going to be. I'm going to talk about the charter system. And I may or may not, it'll be a game time decision, do an analysis of the upcoming race at the LA Coliseum, the Clash at the Coliseum. Yeah, so that about does it for this week. I'm Dave Firestone, and I'll see you next week.